Welcome back to the Wild Lab, everybody. My name is Ned Widener, and today I'm taking the mic on a solo episode to talk about the fear of first steps. Before I get into today's story, I want to share about a new upcoming offering that we have. It's a 4-day men's backcountry backpacking trip into the Hoover Wilderness. And I'm partnering with my friend Bradley over at Nature's Not Metal to make this offering happen. And if you haven't, listen, if you haven't been into the Hoover Wilderness, it's one of the Sierra's most underrated places. It's a myriad of lakes, and it's in the upper Walker River watershed. It's just absolutely fantastic. There's waterfalls. It's a really, really wild place, and a place that's really special to my heart. And so I'd love to take we'd love to take some men out into it. And so if you're interested in stepping into that edge, if you're interested in going into the woods with us, with myself and Bradley and a few other people, check out over on my Instagram at Step Into Your Wild, or on my website at stepintoyourwild.com. And yeah, send me a DM and we'll get you into it. It's really going to be a great, great time. But let's get into today's story. So I often hear the phrase fear is a doorway and your life is on the other side of it so many times that it's become a cliche. And I see it in the woods, I see it around the campfire, I see it in the river. It's this moment where a man stands on the edge, something that he's always wanted, and he freezes. It's not that he can't do it. It's because that first step often feels like stepping off the map. So many people I know that come out into the woods with me, they have a dream. They have something they want to build. They want to write a book. They want to take a trip. They want to build a business. And I mean, just the other day, we're scouting with this guy. He wants to write a book, and it's sort of a memoir, and build a breathwork and yoga retreat center in the jungle. Now, this is a man who's wildly educated. He has a lot of money, and he's built a few other successful businesses along the way, yet he didn't feel ready to live the life that he truly wanted to live. And so we're walking through the pines, and I asked him, "What's stopping you, brother? What's stopping you from selling your house, moving to the jungle, and starting your center?" And he looked at me and he said, I don't know enough yet. I don't feel ready." And I stopped. My feet were resting in the pine duff. I said, "You don't know enough?" I said, "You've been training breath work, you've been training yoga, somatics, nature therapy. You've done it for years." I said, "What do you mean you don't know enough?" He's like, "Well, I've never really led a big group of people. Like, I feel like I need to feel comfortable leading big groups of people before I can actually do this, before I can actually start a center." I looked up at the ridge where we were headed, and its rocky outline was cropped by the blue California sky above it. And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Take a seat, man. Let me tell you a story." You see, back when I was a young buck in Ohio, my very first job at the age of 15, I mean, prior to like raking leaves and splitting wood for my dad, was working for this man named Willie. We all just called him Old Man Willie, even though he was probably only in his 40s or 50s at the time. But, anyways, Willie ran a trail rides next to a state park along this river in southern Ohio, along the East Fork River. And my job, he called me an independent wrangler. At the time, I had no idea what that was. I still really don't, to be honest. But my job was to take people out on trail rides, sometimes in his property, which that's an entirely different story, and sometimes on the state park that abutted his property. And like I said, the East Fork of Little Miami cut between his property and the river. And for the first couple of weeks that I was there, I just took people on rides mostly on his side, following the lead trail guide so that I knew where I was going and I could get a feel for the trails, and yeah, so that I could lead some on my own. Then a couple weeks in, the lead guide quit. I don't know the details of why he quit, but what I do know is that Willie wasn't really known for keeping people around too long. Largely because he treated his employees much like he treated his horses, like shit. And partly because he spent the vast majority of his days up in his house sipping White Lightning. But, anyways, that's sort of beside the point. Since the lead guide quit, I had to take the folks up on the trail. And it was a full day trail ride, right? We were supposed to be gone all day, which meant we had to cross the river into the state park. Only I didn't know the way. And admittedly, at that age, I had yet to cross more than a little creek with a horse. So I was nervous. I didn't know where I was going. I knew I had to cross a river, and I was scared. But I got the guest horses ready. I tacked up my own. I remember this horse is this beautiful, big, tall, black Rocky Mountain horse, and ironically or not so ironically, named Rocky. And then we started down the trail. There was 4 guests that day. I had them lined up behind me. I remember they were all from one of the local or nearby universities. One of them was a cheerleader. Another was a basketball player, and the 2 others were coaches or administrators or something. I don't know why they were there, but anyways, they were laughing, they were chatting as soon as we got on the trail. But me, I was sweating bullets, as Dave Mustaine might say, because I knew I had to cross the river. I knew where we were supposed to go. I had to wade the river, and I was terrified. So this trail up at Willie's, down to the park, it goes along this steep cliff, or at least it used to. I haven't been there in years. But from the top, I could see the river was running pretty full. It was early summer, and we'd had a lot of rains that spring, I remember. So the river was full. Wasn't out of its banks by any stretch, but it was full. And each step we took, each step we got closer, this little voice inside my head keep telling me to turn around, keep telling me to make up an excuse of something was wrong, my horse was lame or whatever. A reason that I couldn't do it because I was scared. Anyways, before too long, it wasn't that far, but before too long, we were at the banks of the East Fork River and we're looking across at this slow moving section of water. Didn't seem too deep, but it was much larger than any of the creeks that I'd crossed at that point in my life. The coaches, the players, they all gave like the little woos of excitement when they realized we were crossing the river, and the cheerleaders, she just laughed and giggled. They were excited. I was not. Seemingly I was the only one that was scared, and I was the one that had to lead them across. Anyways, I sat there on top of Rocky, and I was looking at the river in front of us, and I knew if I waited too long, I'd lose the group. They wouldn't follow me anymore. I also knew I'd probably lose a part of myself. And Rocky could sense my anxiety. I don't know if you've ridden horses, but horses can always sense your anxiety. They can sense your feelings. And he began pawing at the water and at his feet and tossing his head. And I turned to my guests and I said, I'm going to cross first. Told him I'm going to cross first. And after I get to the other side, y'all follow me over one by one. Anyways, Rocky was pulling at the bit in anticipation. He wanted to go in. He wasn't scared one bit. The horse wasn't. That you could shoot guns off of that horse. He was in movie. He was really a fantastic horse. He wasn't afraid. So I followed his lead. I took a breath. I loosened my reins and I gave him his head. And then he took a step. And just before he did, that fear rose so much, tightened up in my chest. I was terrified. But then as his hoof placed down on the gravel, there was a calm that began to filter through my fear. And with each of his sturdy steps in the current of the river, this whirlpool of questions, all those voices in my head, the what ifs, the what might be's, all just kind of receded and faded away. And then something else really magical happened. One step, we were on solid ground. And the next, Rocky's legs were kicking back and forth in the current, and he was treading water. And I slid my body to the side, and I held on to the saddle horn, and we were swimming. I'd never swam with horses. I'd never crossed the river, but we were swimming that day. We were floating, and we were flying, and in that moment, I'd never felt so free. In that moment, I never felt so free from burdens. I felt unmoored from all the what ifs, all the voices in my head, all the things that I told me, all the fears, because I didn't carry them anymore. Rocky was carrying them for me. And in that moment, as we glided, floated, flew, it felt like, to the other side, I was free. I was free. And now the coaches, the cheerleader, the basketball player, I don't remember any of their names, but they didn't think twice. They all just followed me through, not one by one. I think they all kind of came across together in this the laughing, shouting the whole way, right? It wasn't a big deal to them. They didn't know enough about horses or rivers, or maybe they didn't know enough about fear. I don't know, to be scared. But anyways, the rest of the day was a breeze. We rode, we talked sports, we stopped for lunch, and I got them back to the barn before nightfall, and they were all safe. But I learned something that day. I learned that sometimes when we face our fears, the world opens up whole new sets of possibilities, greater than we can ever even imagine. And after I told that story to my friend that day when we were scouting, he picked up a pine cone on the ground and he squeezed it, and he just squeezed it in his hand, squashed it. And he kind of tossed it. He said, I see what you're saying, man. I see what you're getting at. He said, you think I'm afraid of success. I was like, no, man, it's not it. I'm saying you fear what you don't know. I'm saying you fear the unknown. And sometimes, yeah, that might be success. Sometimes that might be failure. Sometimes it might be something wilder than you could ever even imagine. Thing is, you'll never know until you try. And I looked at him and I was like, man, it sure beats the alternative of sitting here wishing for a different life. He sat there in the pines for quite a while. The wind was rattling through the needles. Seemed like I had something to say that neither of us really could. And finally he said, so you're saying I should just step in? I was like, yeah, man, that's it. You got to step in. You don't have to be ready. You just got to start moving. The river, man, the river will teach you the rest. The river and the horse will teach you the rest. Because here's the thing. First steps are never about certainty. They're about surrender. You can study the map, you can gather your gear, and you should. You should do those things. You should prepare. You should rehearse your lines. You should know what you're going to do. Absolutely. Preparation is important. But there'll always be the moment when you're standing there at the edge of the water with your heart hammering. And the voice is inside your head. And you have that voice inside your head telling you it's time to turn back. But if you loosen your reins, you give your fear its due, step in anyways, the current and the horse will carry you. And sometimes if you're lucky, you'll find yourself not just crossing, but swimming and flying underwater with a horse. Not just surviving, but alive. Alive in a way that you never thought possible. So, if you're standing at the edge of the bank, staring across at a life you've been dreaming about, here's my advice. Don't wait to be ready. Don't wait for the fear to disappear. Trust your horse, whatever form that takes. That first step might feel like the heaviest step you've ever taken. But here's the thing, once you're in, you'll find that the freedom you've been chasing was never on the far side of the shore. That freedom, you'll find that freedom in the crossing. And that's it, y'all. That's the story for today. So for those of you who are ready to step in, who are ready to meet your edge and face your own fears, join us on our upcoming 4-day backpacking retreat into Hoover Wilderness. Like I said, it's one of the most amazing places in this area that you haven't heard of. We have some other offerings upcoming in the coming months, and also some openings for next year at Walker School of the Wild. So for more information, check us out on Instagram at Step Into Your Wild, or over on our website at stepintoyourwild.com. And so thanks for listening to another episode of the Wild Lab. If this episode stirred something in you, please follow, like, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever it does on the platform that you're on, and share this episode with friends. It really does help. Until next time, remember, stay curious, stay connected, and stay wild.